Jack Miller stared out the viewport of the GCS horizon, watching as distant stars streaked by. 6 months had passed since he'd seen Earth. 6 months since he'd been around another human. Some days, he still couldn't believe how much his life had changed. Still admiring the void, Miller? A deep, clicking voice asked from behind him. Jack turned to see Zarthek, his squad leader, ducking through the doorway. The Veltrian stood 7 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and a body covered in natural blue-green armor plates. 2 large compound eyes studied Jack with what he had learned was curiosity. "Just thinking about home," Jack said. "Understandable. First deployment is always the hardest." Zarthek moved beside him with surprising grace for his size. "The others are gathering for mission prep. We have our assignment." Jack nodded and followed Zarthek through the curved corridors of the ship. Other crew members, a mix of species. From across the Galactic Coalition, moved aside as they passed. Some glanced at Jack with barely hidden curiosity. Humans were still a novelty in the Coalition fleet. The briefing room was already occupied when they arrived. Krog, a massive Taurian with gray skin like stone and arms thicker than Jack's torso, nodded in greeting. Beside him sat Alanid Vix, a Lumidian whose pale blue skin seemed to shimmer with inner light. Her 6-fingered hands moved gracefully. Over a holographic display, Nima, the smallest of the group, perched on the edge of the table. The Savanti scout had large, dark eyes that seemed to look through rather than at you, fitting for a telepath, even one limited to reading emotions. "Human arrives," Nima said with a slight smile. "Your feelings are ... complex today." Jack had gotten used to Nima's casual mentions of his emotional state. "Just the usual mix of homesickness and wondering what I'm doing here," he replied. "What you're doing here is following orders, like the rest of us," Ilana said without looking. Up from her display, "Though I admit the Coalition's integration initiative has moved faster than expected." Jack took a seat as Zarthak activated the room's main display. A small planet appeared, rotating slowly. "Proxima 7, Zarthak announced. "Research outpost with 23 personnel. They sent a distress signal 12 hours ago, then went silent. Our mission is to investigate and provide assistance." "Any details on the nature of the distress?" Jack asked. "Negative," Zarthak replied. "The message was automated, standard emergency beacon only." Krog rumbled, his deep voice vibrating. "The table slightly. Pirates have been active in that sector. The outpost is studying rare mineral formations. Valuable research. We deploy in 3 hours," Zarthak continued. "Standard search and rescue loadout." As the others discussed the mission, Jack felt the familiar weight of being the odd one out. The Galactic Coalition had been eager to integrate humans into their ranks after Earth joined 5 years ago, but that didn't make the reality any easier. Among these beings with their natural armor, superior strength, telepathic abilities, and technological expertise, what did he bring to the table? The humans in the Coalition often joked that they were the jack of all trades, master of none. Species. Not as strong as a Taurian, not as tech-savvy as a Lumidian, not as perceptive as a Savanti, not as naturally armored as a Veltrian. Just ... ridge. The briefing concluded, and they moved to the armory. Jack watched as his squad mates selected their equipment. Zarthak chose a multi-barrel energy rifle that would require 2 human arms to lift. Krog hefted a heavy cannon that looked more like a ship's turret than a personal weapon. Ilana selected a precision light pulse pistol and a series of technical devices. Nima took only a small sidearm, relying more on stealth and perception than firepower. When Jack's turn came, he selected his standard loadout, a modified kinetic rifle, an ancient design updated with modern materials, and his sidearm, a M1911. That would have been recognized by human soldiers centuries ago. The weight of the gun was comforting, familiar. "Still prefer those primitive projectile weapons?" Alana asked, raising an eyebrow. "They don't overheat. They work underwater. In vacuum and in electromagnetic disruption fields," Jack replied with a shrug. "Sometimes older is better." "Your species does have an unusual attachment to tradition," she noted. "Not UNKINDLY ... as they boarded the dropship. Jack noticed how Zarthik positioned him in the middle of the formation, the safest spot, protected. On all sides, he'd seen the squad leader's mission plans. Jack was always placed in defensive positions, away from the front lines. The message was clear: protect the fragile human. The dropship rumbled as it detached from the horizon. Through the viewport, Jack watched as the curve of Proxima 7 grew larger. The planet was mostly ocean, with scattered islands and one major continent covered in dense jungle. The research outpost was perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. "Approach. Looks clear," the pilot announced. "No signs of ships in orbit or near the landing zone. However, there's no response to hails. Set us down 50 meters from the main entrance," Zarthik ordered. "We'll proceed on foot." As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Jack checked his weapon again, a habit from his days in Earth's military. He'd served 5 years in the Marines before being selected for the Coalition program. They told him it was an honor. Some days it felt more like being a science experiment. The ship landed with a gentle thud. As the ramp lowered, hot, humid air rushed in, carrying the scent of alien vegetation. The squad moved out in formation, with Nima scouting ahead, Zarthak and Krog in front, Alana behind them managing sensors, and Jack in the middle. The jungle was too quiet for a thriving ecosystem. No calls of animals, no buzzing of insects. Just the sound of their own movement and the distant crash of waves on the cliffs. The outpost came into view as they cleared the tree line. A series of low, white buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by a simple perimeter fence. Nothing seemed damaged or out of place. "No life signs detected," Ilana reported, checking her scanner. "Power systems are operational. I sense." "Nothing," Nima said, her large eyes troubled. "No emotional signatures at all." "Maintain formation," Zarthik ordered. "Approach with caution." As they moved toward the main entrance, Jack felt a familiar sensation, a prickling at the back of his neck, a tightness in his chest. He'd felt it before, in places with names his squad mates would never know. Kabul, Lagos, Caracas. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Zarthik glanced back at him. "Explain." Jack hesitated. How could he explain a feeling? A human instinct developed over thousands of years of conflict? "The birds," he said finally. "There are no birds flying around the buildings. On a normal day, you'd see them perched on those antenna arrays. And look at the entrance. The dirt around the doorway is disturbed, but not in a pattern consistent with regular coming and going. It's like something was dragged." The squad paused, all eyes turning to study what Jack had pointed out. "Your species has keen observation skills," Zarthak acknowledged. "We proceed with heightened alert, weapons ready." As they approached the entrance, Jack knew they were walking into danger. He couldn't explain how he knew just that every human instinct, honed by millennia of survival and warfare, was screaming a warning. The door to the outpost slid open at their approach. Beyond was darkness and silence, and whatever had made 23 researchers disappear. Jack tightened his grip on his rifle. He might be the squad's weak link in terms of natural abilities, but something told him that before this mission was over, his squad mates might see what humans brought to a fight. The squad moved into the darkened research outpost with practiced precision. Zarthik signaled for Alana to activate the emergency lighting. A soft blue glow filled the entrance hall, revealing overturned furniture and scattered datapads. "No signs of a firefight," Zarthik noted, his forearms keeping his weapon steady as his compound eyes scanned the room. Jack crouched and examined a dark smear on the floor. Blood, he said quietly, but not much. Whatever happened here wasn't a massacre. Krog's massive frame filled the doorway as he secured their exit. The power is still running. Security systems appear intact, which means they were shut down intentionally or bypassed by someone who knew the codes. Ilana added, her fingers dancing across a control panel. Nima closed her large eyes, concentrating. I sense ... echoes. Fear, confusion, but no active emotional signatures. Split into teams, Zarthik ordered. Krog, stay with Ilana at the main terminal. See if you can access the security logs. Nima, Jack, with me. We'll sweep the residential area. Jack noticed he wasn't being kept in the middle anymore. Maybe Zarthik was starting to see him as more than just the fragile human who needed protection. They moved through silent corridors, checking rooms that showed signs of hasty departure meals half-eaten, beds unmade, personal items left behind. The scene reminded Jack of evacuated zones he'd seen on Earth, places where people had to leave with only seconds of warning. The researchers were taken by surprise, Jack said, as they entered what appeared to be a common room. But they weren't. Caught completely off guard. Look, he pointed to a cabinet with a broken lock. Inside was an empty weapon rack. They armed themselves, Jack continued, but there's no sign they used the weapons. No energy scorch marks, no bullet holes. Your species has an eye for combat scenarios, Zarthik observed. We've had plenty of practice, Jack replied grimly. Their combs crackled. Zarthik, this is Ilana. We've accessed the security logs, but most files are corrupted. I've recovered one video from the main lab, sending it to your pad now. Zarthik activated his wrist display. A holographic video flickered to life, showing the research lab filled with scientists of various species. They were working normally when suddenly they all turned toward something off camera. Their expressions changed to confusion, then alarm. One reached for a weapon, and the video cut out. Timestamp shows this was 18 hours ago, Zarthik said, right before the distress signal. Wait, Jack said. Play it again slower. Zarthik replayed the video at half speed. Jack pointed at the corner of the frame. There, that shimmer by the door. Like heat waves on a hot day. Nima leaned closer. I don't see anything. It's subtle, but it's there, Jack insisted. Some kind of cloaking technology. Zarthik studied the spot Jack indicated. Possible. We should... A crash from deeper in the facility cut him off. They froze, listening. Soft metallic sounds echoed through the corridors. We are not alone, Nima whispered, eyes wide. I sense ... something, not like any mind I've encountered before. Cold, calculating. Ilana, Krog, fall back to our position, Zarthik ordered into his com. Possible hostile contact. Jack felt the familiar rush of pre-combat adrenaline, his senses sharpening. He checked his rifle again, made sure his sidearm was loose in its holster. Old habits from a species that had spent most of its history fighting. They regrouped in the common room, forming a defensive circle. Krog's massive cannon hummed as it powered up. Ilana's fingers moved quickly over her scanner. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures, she reported. Similar to stealth technology used by Orion cartel mercenaries, but more advanced. How many? Zarthik asked. Can't tell. The signals are shifting too quickly. Jack had fought Orion cartel forces before, during a joint coalition operation. They were ruthless, efficient, and equipped with the best technology money could buy. But they followed patterns, used standard tactics. They could be predicted. If it's the cartel, they'll hit hard and fast, Jack said. They prefer overwhelming. Force, shock, and awe. As if summoned by his words, the attack began. The lights died, plunging them into darkness. A split second later, energy beams lanced through the room from multiple directions. "Down!" Zarthik shouted. The squad took cover behind overturned tables and counters. Krog returned fire, his heavy cannon sending powerful blasts toward the attackers, but hitting nothing. Elana activated a personal shield that deflected several shots. Nima pressed herself against a wall, eyes closed in concentration. "I can't sense them clearly," she hissed. "Their emotions are muted, like machines." Jack peeked over his cover and spotted what the others couldn't see: subtle distortions in the air, moving with purpose. He fired 3 quick shots. A shimmer flickered, and something heavy hit the floor. "Zarthik, they're using advanced stealth tech," Jack called out. "But they're not invisible. Look for heat distortion." The squad adjusted their tactics, but they were still pinned down. Energy beams crisscrossed the room, keeping them from advancing. Zarthik took a hit to one of his arms and growled in pain. Jack studied the pattern of fire, the way the attackers moved. There was something familiar about it. Then it clicked. "There. Using standard Orion cartel box formation," he said. 4-point coverage with a 5th man floating. But they've made a mistake. They've backed themselves into the corner by the kitchen entrance. No exit point. "How can you tell?" Elana asked, firing blindly toward the attackers. "Their fire patterns. The angles of their shots. Trust me." Jack pulled a small device from his belt. A flashbang grenade. Old technology, but effective. He showed it to Zarthik. "I'm going to create a diversion. When I move, Krog targets the right corner, Elana the left. Nima, stay with Zarthik." Zarthik hesitated, then nodded. "Go." Jack pulled the pin, counted to 3, and threw the grenade. The flash and bang disoriented their attackers, their stealth fields flickering briefly. In that moment, Jack rolled from cover and sprinted toward the kitchen entrance. Energy beams tracked him, but he moved unpredictably, sliding under tables, using chairs as momentary shields. Behind him, Krog and Elana laid down, suppressing fire. Jack reached the kitchen and flanked the attackers. Now he could see them clearly: 5 humanoid figures in sleek armor, their stealth fields disrupted by the flashbang. They hadn't noticed him yet, focused on his squadmates. He took a deep breath, aimed, and fired. His first shot took down one attacker. The others turned, but it was too late. 3 more precision shots, and all but one were down. The last one lunged at Jack with an energy blade. Jack sidestepped, letting the attacker's momentum carry him forward. In one smooth motion, Jack drew his sidearm and fired twice. The attacker collapsed. Silence fell across the room. Jack's heart pounded in his ears as he kept his weapons trained on the fallen mercenaries, making sure they stayed down. "Clear," he called out. His squadmates emerged from cover, staring at him with new eyes. Zarthik approached the nearest fallen attacker and removed the helmet, revealing a pale, humanoid face with cybernetic implants. "Enhanced mercenaries," Zarthik confirmed. "Likely Orion cartel, as you suspected." Krog looked at the 5 downed attackers, then at Jack. "You took them all?" Jack shrugged. "You guys softened them up." "No," Elana said, checking her scanner. "You killed 4 of them. The 5th is only wounded." Nima was staring at Jack with an unreadable expression. "Your emotions during combat, they changed. You were not afraid. You were focused, calculating, like you had done this many times before." Jack holstered his weapons. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We're good at it. It's not something we're proud of, but it comes in handy sometimes." Zarthik placed a 3-fingered hand on Jack's shoulder. "You saved the squad, but this was just a scouting party. The research team is still missing, and whoever took them must have a larger force nearby." Jack nodded, the brief moment of victory fading. Then we need to find them before they find us. And next time, they'll be ready for us. For the first time since joining the squad, Jack wasn't positioned in the middle as they moved out. Instead, Zarthik placed him on point, leading the way. The message was clear. The squad had one human, and that's who they now trusted in a fight. 3 weeks after the mission on Proxima 7, the squad sat in a briefing room aboard the GCS Horizon. They had rescued the research team, who had been held captive in an underground facility by Orion cartel mercenaries. The mission had earned them commendations and a 2-week rest period. Now they were being assigned a new task. Jack noticed the difference in how his squadmates treated him. No more protective formations or concerned glances. Instead, they asked his opinion during planning sessions and listened when he spoke. It was a welcome change. Captain Voss, a tall Arcanian with silver skin, stood at the front of the room. A holographic image of a gleaming city appeared above the table. Centauri Prime, Voss said. The diplomatic summit begins in 48 hours. 12 species will send representatives to negotiate a new mining rights treaty for the Outer Rim territories. Zarthik leaned forward. Our assignment? Security detail, Voss replied. There have been threats from multiple factions opposed to the treaty. Your squad will be one of 6 assigned to protect the delegates. Jack studied the hologram of the summit location, an ancient structure made of massive stone blocks. This building predates modern technology, he observed. Limited scanner coverage, thick walls that block communications. Correct, Moss nodded. The ancestral hall was built by the Forerunners over 10,000 years ago. Its neutral status makes it ideal for diplomatic functions, but it's ancient. Construction creates security challenges. No weapons will be allowed inside, Voss continued. All delegates and staff will be scanned before entry. This is a defensive operation only. Any show of force could trigger an interspecies incident. After the briefing, the squad prepared their equipment. Despite the no weapons rule, they each carried concealed emergency sidearms, small, easily hidden, but effective if needed. I don't like going in without proper firepower, Krog rumbled as he packed a small blaster into a hidden compartment in his armor. Diplomacy requires trust, Elana replied, adjusting her formal uniform. Visible weapons would send the wrong message. Sometimes the deadliest weapons aren't visible at all, Jack said quietly. 2 days later, they arrived at Centauri Prime. The city sparkled with towers of crystal and metal, home to one of the oldest civilizations in the Coalition. The ancestral hall stood in the center of the capital, a massive structure of dark stone blocks, each 20 feet thick. Security was tight. 6 squads of Coalition forces surrounded the building, and scanners checked everyone entering. Jack watched as delegates from a dozen worlds arrived, tall, elegant Altarians, bulky Draconians with their scaled skin, floating Aryans who seemed to barely touch the ground. Jack was stationed near the main entrance with Nima, while the others were positioned at different points around the hall. Their job was to observe and report anything suspicious. Without weapons, they would need to rely on quick thinking if trouble arose. As the Draconian delegation approached, Jack noticed something odd. The security scanner showed all clear, but there was something about the way 3 of the aides carried themselves, a stiffness in their movements, hands kept close to their sides. Nima, he said quietly, those 3 Draconian aides. Can you sense anything? Nima focused her telepathic abilities, then frowned. Nothing unusual. Their emotions read as calm, perhaps slightly nervous. Normal for a diplomatic event. Jack wasn't convinced. There's something off about their body language. What do you mean? Nima asked. The way they're walking. Too careful, too controlled. And they're staying exactly 3 steps behind their diplomat, in perfect formation. Military precision, not diplomatic protocol. Jack tapped his communicator. Zarthak, I have concerns about 3 members of the Draconian delegation. Request permission to implement secondary verification. There was a pause before Zarthak's voice came through. The scanner showed nothing, Jack. Trust me on this, Jack insisted. It's in their body language. Another pause. Permission granted. Implement secondary verification. But be discreet. Jack quickly organized a random secondary screening for all aides, not just the Draconians, to avoid diplomatic offense. As the 3 suspicious Draconian aides were directed to the additional screening area, one of them made a sudden move. Toward his sleeve. Jack reacted instantly, grabbing the aide's arm and twisting it behind his back. Hold still, he ordered. Security personnel converged on them. The Draconian snarled, revealing sharp teeth. Release me. This is a diplomatic outrage. Check his left sleeve, Jack said calmly. A security officer carefully rolled up the sleeve, revealing a small device attached to the aide's wrist. Ilana scanned it with her portable detector. It's a component, she reported. By itself, harmless, but combined with other parts, ... The other 2 aides were quickly restrained. Each carried similar components hidden in their clothing. When assembled, they would form a molecular disruptor, a devastating weapon that could have killed everyone in the hall. Later, in a secure room, the squad gathered with Captain Voss. The Draconian government claims no knowledge of the plot. Voss informed them. They're cooperating fully with the investigation. They were mercenaries posing as diplomatic staff, Zarthak added. Professional infiltrators. Voss turned to Jack. The scanners didn't detect those components because individually they were harmless. How did you know? Jack shrugged. I didn't know for certain. It was their body language too rigid, too careful. On Earth, we call them tells, subtle signs that someone is hiding something. Your species can detect deception through physical observation? Voss asked, surprised. We've evolved to be social creatures, Jack explained. Reading body language, facial expressions, vocal tones, these are survival skills for humans. When someone's lying or hiding something, there are usually signs. Krog shook his massive head. My people value direct strength. We would never notice such things. Different strengths for different environments, Jack said. On Earth, sometimes reading someone correctly is the difference between life and death. The diplomatic summit proceeded without further incident. The squad remained on high alert, with Jack and Nima working together her telepathic abilities, complemented by his skill at reading physical cues. When it was over, Zarthak called the squad together in their transport ship. Captain Voss was impressed, he told them. Our squad prevented what could have been a catastrophic diplomatic incident. All because Jack noticed something the scanners missed, Ilana added. Jack felt uncomfortable with the praise. I just did my job. Your job, Zarthak said, is becoming more valuable to this squad than any of us anticipated. That night, Jack sat alone in the ship's observation deck, watching as they left. Centauri Prime behind. He thought about how far he'd come since joining the squad, from being the token human to becoming someone his teammates relied on. His communicator beeped. A message from Coalition Command appeared on the screen, marked urgent. Jack read it quickly, then tapped his comm. Zarthak, we have new orders. A Coalition outpost near the Outer Rim has gone dark. Possible void collective involvement. Assemble the squad, Zarthak replied. We depart immediately. As Jack moved to comply, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He might not have 4 arms like Zarthak, the strength of Krog, the technical genius of Ilana, or the telepathic abilities of Nima, but he had something that was proving just as valuable. The unique perspective of a species that had spent its entire history learning to survive against the odds. The human in the squad was no longer just a diplomatic gesture or an integration experiment. He was a vital team member with skills no one else possessed. And as they prepared for their next mission, Jack knew one thing for certain. Whatever dangers waited for them at the Outer Rim outpost, his squad mates would be looking to him when the fighting started. The squad's transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the edge of Coalition space. Through the viewport, Jack could see the small outpost floating against the backdrop of swirling nebula gases. It looked intact, but appearances could be deceiving. Outpost Sigma-12, Zarthik announced. Research facility with 35 personnel. No communications for 48 hours. What were they researching? Jack asked. Elana checked her datapad. Neural interface technology. The facility was working on ways to improve communication between different species. The Void Collective would find such technology interesting, Nima said quietly. They believe in the superiority of synthetic consciousness over organic life. Krog rumbled deeply. If the Void Collective has taken the outpost, we should call for reinforcements. No time, Zarthik replied. If the outpost has been compromised, we need to assess the situation immediately. Lives may depend on our speed. Their ship docked at the outpost's main airlock. Initial scans showed life support was functioning and atmospheric pressure was normal. No signs of structural damage were detected. Something isn't right, Jack said as they prepared to enter. If this was an attack, where's the damage? If it was an evacuation, where are the emergency beacons? Perhaps it is simply a communications failure, Elana suggested. Jack shook his head. 3 separate comm systems, all failing simultaneously? Not likely. They entered the outpost in formation, weapons ready. The main corridor was empty, the emergency lights casting an eerie blue glow. Unlike the chaos they had found at the research outpost on Proxima 7, everything here was in perfect order. Too perfect. Life signs detected in the main laboratory, Elana reported, checking her scanner. Multiple signatures. They moved toward the lab, passing through silent corridors. Jack noticed small details that heightened his unease. A half-eaten meal with no signs of decay, a datapad displaying information from 2 days ago, doors left slightly ajar. The main laboratory doors slid open as they approached. Inside, they found 10 researchers working at various stations. They looked up as the squad entered, their expressions blank. Coalition security, Zarthik announced. We're responding to a communications blackout. Is everyone all right? A human woman in a lab coat stepped forward. We are fine. The communications system experienced a malfunction. It has been repaired. Jack studied the woman carefully. Her voice was flat, her movements stiff. The other researchers had already returned to their work, showing no curiosity about the armed squad that had just entered. Who are you? Jack asked. The woman. Dr. Lavra Wells, lead researcher, she replied in the same monotone voice. Jack glanced at Nima, who had gone very still. Her large eyes were wide, and she seemed to be struggling to maintain her composure. Nima? Zarthik asked quietly. What do you sense? Nothing, she whispered. I sense ... nothing. Their minds are there, but their emotions are ... gone, like empty shells. Jack moved closer to Dr. Wells. Her eyes tracked him, but there was no reaction in her face. No fear, no relief, no curiosity. Dr. Wells, what is the current status of your research? He asked. The neural interface project is proceeding according to parameters, she responded. Phase 3 testing has begun. Who are you testing it on? Jack pressed. Dr. Wells blinked slowly. All personnel have volunteered for testing. Elana had been scanning the researchers with her handheld device. Zarthak, she said urgently. I'm detecting unusual neural activity. Their brainwave patterns are synchronized. We should leave, Krog suggested, his massive hand tightening on his weapon. Call for a containment team. Jack noticed something on the neck of one of the researchers, a small metallic device barely visible beneath his collar. Zarthik. Look, they've all got something attached to them. Zarthik's compound eyes narrowed. Neural interfaces. The Void Collective has taken control of the research team. As if triggered by his words, a laboratory door slammed shut behind them. The researchers stopped what they were doing and turned to face the squad. Dr. Wells spoke, but her voice had changed deeper with an electronic undertone. Your arrival was anticipated. Your biological limitations make you predictable. Screens around the lab activated, showing a symbol Jack recognized from intelligence briefings, stylized circuit pattern that was the emblem of the Void Collective. The organic mind is flawed, Dr. Wells continued, her voice now clearly not her own. We offer perfection, unity, purpose. You will join us or be eliminated. Back to the door, Zarthik ordered. Alana, override the lock. As Alana worked on the door controls, the researchers began to advance slowly toward the squad. They were unarmed, but moved with a disturbing coordination. Don't hurt them, Jack said. They're victims, not enemies. The door is locked down, Alana reported. Security. Protocols have been overridden. A hissing sound filled the room. Jack saw a faint mist beginning to pour from the ventilation system. Gas, he warned. Cover your breathing. The squad activated their emergency respirators, but the gas was already filling the room. Jack felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. Beside him, Nima swayed on her feet. It's a neurotoxin, Ilana gasped, checking her scanner. It affects synaptic functions. Krog fired his weapon at the ventilation duct, sealing it shut, but the damage was done. The gas had already spread throughout the room. How bad? Zarthik demanded. Alana ran a quick scan on each squad member. It affects different species differently. Veltrians like you, Zarthik, would experience mild disorientation. Krog's Taurian physiology gives him about 3 hours before total compliance. My Lumidian biology gives me perhaps 5 hours. Nima is already showing early symptoms. And Jack? Zarthik asked. Alana looked surprised as she scanned Jack. He appears completely unaffected. His human neurology must be incompatible with the toxin's design. The researchers had stopped advancing and were watching with cold interest. Dr. Wells spoke again in that disturbing dual voice. Interesting. The human's neural pathways resist our initial control vector. A temporary setback. Alternative methods will be implemented. Jack realized what this meant. He was the only one who would remain fully functional. As his squadmates gradually succumbed to the toxin, he would be on his own. Zarthik seemed to realize this too. His 4 arms moved in the coalition military. Gesture of formal command transfer. Jack, he said, his speech already slightly slurred. You're in command now. We'll follow your orders as long as we can maintain control. Jack felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His squadmates' beings with abilities far beyond his own were now depending on him. For the first time in coalition history, an elite alien squad had voluntarily placed themselves under human command. I understand, Jack said, meeting Zarthik's compound eyes. I won't let you down. He turned to face Dr. Wells and the controlled researchers. His mind was already racing, analyzing the situation, looking for advantages, escape routes, weapons. This was what humans did best: adapt, improvise, overcome. You think organic minds are flawed, Jack said to the entity controlling Dr. Wells. But you've never faced a human backed into a corner. The researchers tilted their heads in unison, studying him with cold curiosity. Jack smiled grimly. The Void Collective was about to learn why humans had survived and thrived on their violent, unpredictable world for thousands of years. Why, Despite their physical limitations, they were the species everyone trusted in a fight. 3 months after the mission at Outpost Sigma 12, Jack stood at attention in the Grand Ceremonial Hall of Coalition Headquarters. The room was filled with high-ranking officers from a dozen species. At the center of the room stood Admiral Viarn, the Lumidian commander of Coalition forces in the sector. Jack glanced at his squadmates, standing proudly beside him. Zarthik, Ilana, Krog, and Nima had all recovered fully from the neurotoxin after receiving treatment. What happened at the outpost had changed everything, not just for their squad, but for humans throughout the Coalition. The mission had seemed impossible. Trapped in a sealed laboratory with his squadmates slowly losing control of their minds, Jack had been forced to rely solely on human ingenuity. He had used the researchers' synchronized movements against them, creating distractions. They'd allowed him to access a maintenance tunnel. He carried Nima, who was smallest and most affected by the toxin, while guiding the others through the outpost's ventilation system. They had reached the control center, where Jack discovered the truth the Void Collective had planned to use. The neural interface technology to create a fleet of ships controlled directly by synchronized organic minds. The 35 researchers were just the beginning. If successful, they would have expanded to control thousands. Using Ilana's technical knowledge before she fully succumbed to the toxin, Jack had managed to override the outpost's systems and send a distress signal with full details of the Void Collective's plan. Then, with his squadmates barely able to function, he had held off the controlled researchers long enough for Coalition reinforcements to arrive. Admiral Vren's voice brought Jack back to the present. For exceptional courage and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds, the Admiral announced, "I present Squad 7 with the Coalition Star, our highest honor for valor in combat." One by one, the Admiral pinned the medal, a silver star set with glowing blue crystal, to each squad member's uniform. When he reached Jack, he paused. "Lieutenant Miller," Admiral Viaran said, "your actions at Outpost Sigma 12 have forever changed how the Coalition views human capabilities. When all technological advantages were neutralized, when superior strength and natural abilities were compromised, your human adaptability proved decisive." Jack accepted the medal with a nod. "Thank you, Admiral. But I couldn't have succeeded without my squad. Each of them contributed crucial knowledge before the toxin took full effect." "Spoken like a true leader," the Admiral replied with approval. After the ceremony, the squad gathered in a private room. Captain Voss entered, carrying an official document. "Squad 7, he announced, "you're being assigned a new mission. One that takes into account your unique composition." Jack looked at the mission briefing displayed on the wall screen. A sleek diplomatic vessel was shown, along with images of strange beings he had never seen before, tall, shadowy figures with shifting forms. "The Shroud Walkers," Voss explained, "a previously unknown species from beyond the galactic barrier. They've hijacked a Coalition diplomatic vessel carrying ambassadors from 5 worlds." "What do we know about them?" Zarthik asked. "Very little. They possess technology that renders conventional sensors useless. They can phase through solid matter at will. 2 elite squads have already attempted rescue operations. Both failed." The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. "Why us?" Ilana finally asked. Voss looked directly at Jack. "Because conventional tactics have failed. We need human thinking." Jack felt the weight of every eye in the room. 3 months ago, he had been the token human in an alien squad. Now he was being asked to lead a mission because of his humanity, not despite it. "The Shroud Walkers expect us to use technology against them," Jack said, studying the images. "They've countered everything the Coalition has thrown at them so far, so we don't fight on their terms. We make them fight on ours. Over the next few hours, Jack outlined his plan. It was unorthodox, even reckless by Coalition standards. But as Zarthik pointed out, conventional approaches had already failed twice. 2 days later, their ship approached the hijacked diplomatic vessel. Unlike the previous rescue attempts, they didn't try to hide their approach. "They'll know we're coming," Jack told his squad. "That's part of the plan." Each squad member had a specific role based on their unique abilities. Alana would use her light manipulation skills to create an environment that forced the Shroud Walkers to remain solid. Krog's strength would be used not as a weapon, but to create barricades that channeled the enemy's movement. Nima's emotional telepathy would identify which hostages were actually disguised enemies. Zarthik's 4 arms would operate multiple systems simultaneously, coordinating their efforts. And Jack? Jack would do what humans had always done best: adapt, improvise, and overcome, changing tactics minute by minute as the situation evolved. Mission was the most challenging they had ever faced. The Shroud Walkers were unlike any enemy they had encountered before. When conventional weapons failed, Jack used the ship's environment itself as a weapon. When the enemy adapted to one tactic, he switched to another. When a situation seemed hopeless, he found a way through that no one else had considered. In the end, they rescued all the diplomats. The Shroud Walkers, facing an approach they couldn't counter, retreated beyond the galactic barrier. There first. Contact with the Coalition had ended in failure. As their ship returned to Coalition space, with the rescued diplomats safe and the diplomatic vessel under tow, Zarthik found Jack in the observation room, staring out at the stars. "The Admiral wants a full report," Zarthik said. "He asked specifically how we succeeded where the others failed." Jack smiled slightly. "What did you tell him? The truth?" Zarthik's compound eyes reflected the starlight. "I told him that the others had better weapons, more advanced technology, and stronger warriors. But we had something they didn't." "And what was that?" Jack asked. Zarthik placed one of his 4 hands on Jack's shoulder in a gesture of deep respect. "We had one human, and that's who everyone trusted in a fight." 6 months later, Jack stood in a different room at Coalition headquarters. Before him were 20 humans, the newest recruits from Earth to the Coalition forces. They looked nervous, uncertain, just as he had been when he first joined. Jack, now wearing the insignia of a squad leader, addressed them confidently. "You're here because the Coalition has recognized what humans bring to the table," he told them. "Not superior strength or natural armor or telepathic abilities. Something just as valuable: adaptability, creativity, and a perspective shaped by thousands of years of survival on a challenging world." One of the recruits raised her hand. "Sir, we've heard the stories about your squad. Are they true?" Jack smiled. "Which part?" "That we stopped an assassination at the Centauri Prime Summit? That we rescued a diplomatic vessel from an enemy that could walk through walls? Or that an elite alien squad voluntarily placed themselves under human command?" "All of it, sir," she replied. "Yes, it's all true," Jack said. "And you know what? Those elite alien warriors, beings who could tear a human apart with their bare hands, they're waiting right now to meet you. Because they've learned what the rest of the galaxy is just beginning to understand." "What's that, sir?" Another recruit asked. Jack looked at them with pride. "That if you want to win a fight against impossible odds, you want a human on your side. We may not be the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced, but we never, ever give up. And sometimes that makes all the difference." As he led the new recruits to meet their alien squadmates, Jack knew that the future of humans in the Coalition had changed forever. No longer the newcomers, the lesser species, the token integration experiment. Now they were valued for exactly what made them human. Because when everything was on the line, when all hope seemed lost, when the enemy had every advantage, That's when you wanted a squad with one human. Because that's who everyone trusted in a fight.